Welcome to the show, everyone. You know, if you're planning to be in a marriage for the long haul, there is one thing for certain. The two of you are going to experience highs and lows together as a couple. And grief is going to be one of those emotions that's going to be part of that journey. And whether that is from the loss of a loved one, family member, maybe even the ache of an empty nest, or just the changes that we go through in life with aging, shared grief can be a complex thing for couples to be able to navigate. For some couples, it brings them closer together. And for other couples, it can lead to a lot of hurt feelings and misunderstandings. And this is something that I am personally navigating right now myself. My dad passed away over the weekend. My father, Robert's father-in-law for 33 years. And so this is a topic that is very tender for us right now, very real, very raw and heavy. And so today's episode feels especially meaningful to the two of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And to help us explore how couples can support each other through this grief process, we're really excited to have Jennifer Morris with us. Jen is a grief coach and author of 2 children's books on grief. I will be with you always, and I will remember you always. She's working on her board certification as a hospice chaplain, and we're excited for her to share both her professional expertise and her own personal story with grief. We had the pleasure of meeting Jen and her husband, George, on a diving trip this last summer in the British Virgin Islands, and we connected over shared stories and just some shared meaning. Jen, thank you so much for joining us today, and we really look forward to you sharing your wisdom and maybe even the story behind the books with us.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you, guys. Thank you guys so much for having me here. I am so truly grateful to be here with you guys.
Well, we're grateful. So,
Yeah.
I think maybe where we can start today is I know you have experienced a lot of grief personally. You're no stranger to it, and you have chosen to dedicate your career to helping other people through it. And as we can see, if you're watching this on YouTube, you see the video, you can see we have your books here with us. And I'd love for you to maybe just share for a few minutes about your own personal story and how it led to the work that you do and how it led to the books and the bunny that I'm holding in my lap right now.
Yes. Well, when I was 5 years old, I lost my mother to suicide. And back then it was in the 1970s, and we just didn't have the resources that we have today, thankfully, for people going through that and who are affected by it and having places to heal. And during that journey, my father actually passed. He was an alcoholic, and he passed when I was 24. And having to deal with that as a child, you walk away with a lot of limiting beliefs. I did. The belief that I just wasn't enough. And when I had that belief rooted so deeply inside of me, it just tainted everything in my world. Every decision I made, action I took. I had very surface relationships. I just was so traumatized. I didn't know how to go deep or really connect with other people, let alone myself. And so over the years, I eventually got married, had 5 children, and I always loved reading to my children at night. I love children's books. And I always said to myself, one day I want to write a children's book. However, I had no idea that this is what it would turn into. And unfortunately and fortunately, our past always comes back to us. And I always say between 40 and 50, that's when everything kind of comes to a halt, and we really start to take, men and women, review our lives and just make this conscious decision of, hey, am I going to live the second half of my life like I did the first half? And that's when my husband and I went on a journey of our marriage and where are we in our marriage, and both ended up going to a lot of therapy and counseling, marriage counseling with one another and with ourselves. And the primary thing that we focused on, that the counselors really focused on with us, is our own relationships with ourselves and healing childhood trauma that we both had. And so through that process of that healing journey, really learning to love ourselves, me specifically loving myself and working through and learning how to have deep relationships with people, this book came about. And it's been such a beautiful journey of me healing In fact, I asked my therapist one time, how do you know when you're done with therapy? How do you know as a couple and yourself individually? And he said, you start to become creative. And he said, when you are creative again, that's when you know that you are really, that healing process is taking over. And so this is how it came about. I really feel that I'm just a vessel. The words really came through to me, and I wanted to share and help other children be able to heal if they've lost a parent, or if a parent has lost a child, or a friend or a sibling. It doesn't matter how old we are. Whenever we lose a parent, it's brutal. It's devastating. We can be children. We can be adults. It's equally as devastating that we go through it. And so this is just a different perception on what death is, that through this writing process, I have felt so connected to my mother. The words have just flown through me. I have been able to heal from that trauma. Now, that doesn't mean that it's completely gone, because obviously we're triggered in life by events and certain things. But I have such a different perception on what death is, and that how we are always connected by love, no matter, even if they have passed. And actually, after my mom passed, I had a Snoopy that I carried with me everywhere to bring me comfort. It was my best friend. It was my confidant. And I wanted to create something for the reader to have and to hold if they were having a bad day, if they needed a hug, if they just needed something to comfort them while they read the words in the book. That's really where the bunny comes from, is just to be able to give the grieving person, if a parent lost a child, if a child lost a parent, I'm an adult, and I still will hug the bunny on certain days when I just am like, the world has hit me and I'm struggling. I'll just kind of hold it and take a moment, get back to my breath, and it'll bring me, I'm surprised how much it brings me comfort. So that's how it came about.
Well, I kind of imagine, as you're describing this, I'm kind of imagining that what you've created so there are those who don't see the video. It's a soft, really super soft fabric with these floppy ears on this bunny. And it's just like, it's this little plushie that just feels so good to hold it. And it comes with, you have two different books that integrate the bunny into the stories. But as you're describing it, I'm imagining that what you've created is probably what you kind of wish that you would have had when you were growing up, that we didn't really know how to support back when you and I were growing up. We're about the same age, and there's a lot of conversations we can have today more openly than I think were openly discussed back then, such as suicide. That's a very heavy topic, and people don't know how to approach it, even today.
I was going to say, even today, I mean, back then there weren't support groups and you just did not talk about it. But even today, it's still a really heavy subject to talk about. Our daughter lost one of her best friends at the beginning of COVID to suicide, and to watch it unfold with the family and the school system and parents and principals and friends, I just thought, we need to learn how to talk about this. We just need to learn that it's okay to say the word, and we need to help those who have been affected by it. And also, it's a preventative way to help kids who might be struggling. How do we prevent this? And I think it all comes down in communication, but having that conversation of, what is suicide? Hey, how are you feeling? Making that question directly to your children. Have you ever thought about hurting yourself or taking your life? And we think the birds and the bees is a hard conversation with kids sometimes. But that question, the first time I asked my children that, it was hard for me. And this is what I do. I talk about it, I write about it, and it's still, to this day, I sometimes have to take a deep breath and go, it's okay, but let me ask this direct question. But it's a common conversation now in our family. They know I'm going to ask it. It's a conversation that you need to have into our families. That's not, it's not odd. It's common. And we talk about it like, hey, don't do drugs, right? We need to talk about mental wellness. How are you feeling? Talk to me about this, and just really having that open communication.
I mean, there's several things that I love about just this part, and I don't want to take it too far off of maybe this conversation is going to go wherever it goes, and we shared some stories, and I think Sharla and I have shared on the show before about our daughter and about how she had some depression and some suicidal ideation. And that was truly one of the hardest things. You feel like asking your teen, a teen or anybody, do you feel like harming yourself today? You feel like that's going to make it worse, and I love the card, this thing that you've developed, right? And it's 1 to 10, how you been? I just love that. I think the genius, if I can call it genius for you, is I think anybody could write a book on grief. But I think it takes a lot of strength to write a book on grief that children can read and make it in a non-scary way. And then I think the beauty of that is it transcends. Like, I read this book and I understand it from an adult perspective, right? It's easy to write a book, the kind of books that I read and clinical stuff, but I think it's more challenging to write something that really crosses lots of generations. So
yeah. Good, well said. I think I want to back up for just a second and maybe just even have you describe grief, because it's such a complex emotion and it is tangled with so many other emotions. So when someone is trying to understand it, how do you help someone to understand what grief really is and what it feels like?
Well, I think the first thing is there is no specific textbook version of grief. We're all individual, unique people. Our grief will be the same thing. It will be individualized. It is unique to all of us. You and I will not experience grief the same way because we have a history. It's based on our history, what comes up for us, what doesn't come up for us. So there are different levels of grief, anger and resentment, sadness, loneliness, depression, until finally we're able to come to a place of hope. And that's when the healing process really comes into effect. And when we start to become creative again, and what I think the real natural process of healing is that when we heal, we want to help. I think it's a very natural thing for human beings. We want to help other people. It's like when we go see something, a great movie, we want to tell people, or we went to a great restaurant. We want to spread the word. We want to share the news of something really good. And when you get to the place of really wanting to help others, I think that's a really good sign that you are going through the grieving process. However, one thing is we're still going to be triggered, right? I mean, my mother's she passed away 49 years ago, and there are still moments that I get triggered. Holidays are really big. Birthdays, very significant events can come up and will trigger you. I'm becoming a chaplain. I'm going through chaplain school, and we talk about case studies. And whenever I was doing a case study with another chaplain, and it was about suicide. And I will tell you, this other woman describing her, that was me to a T. And in our break, I totally broke down and just was sobbing. But what that does is it allowed me to be able to visit that, and I knew it wasn't going to take me over. It didn't take me the first time the event happened. It's not going to take me the second. And when we can go back and really feel those emotions and allow ourselves to feel the emotions, that's when we really begin to heal instead of resisting. I'm not going to feel this. It's too dark. It's too deep. I'm resisting it. Well, that just makes it keep coming back and back and back, because it's almost like the emotions tapping us on the shoulder saying, you need to learn something from this. And I'm going to keep coming back until you take the time to stop and really feel what this is about. And so that's when those are signs for me that have really helped in the healing process.
Yeah, I 100% agree with everything you just said, and the learning and not resisting. I've had many conversations with my nieces, my sister. I'm one of 7 children and 5 of us that are still living. And so I'm talking with my siblings, and we're all kind of going through it differently. And Robert's going through it differently as well. Of course, like you said, we all experience it so different. And just as a point to your point is that, like, I was really surprised. My dad was my rock growing up. He was, the person who I feel like set the best example for me, who I feel like he always forgave others, and he was the most unconditionally loving person in my life growing up. And I knew it would be hard, but I also had some time ahead of time to prepare for it because he had 15 plus years with Parkinson's and dementia in the last couple of years. And so part of me thought I was prepared for it. Part of me thought, oh, I'm going to be okay. I don't know why. That's kind of sounds dumb now, right? As I describe it, but,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
but
I didn't think you were going to be okay.
I was surprised for myself. Immediately, of course, I felt sad, but then it changed to anger so quickly. And I was shocked by the anger that I felt. And I won't get into all of the reasons why I felt robbed. I felt angry. I felt like I didn't get an opportunity for certain things. And I was really surprised by the anger that just overcame me. And then I was talking to my niece about it, and she said, I am always, and everyone tells me I'm either happy or mad. I've got two emotions, and they're happy and mad. And when I was sad and started crying, my whole family didn't know what to do with me. They just said, I don't know what to do with this sad version of you. Her husband didn't know what to do. She didn't know what to do. She said, I don't know how to handle this because I'm not someone who ever really feels sadness, and I don't want it. Like, how do I make it magically disappear? I don't want to feel it. And like you're saying, it's not something that you can just avoid because you're going to have to eventually face it.
Exactly. And I think every time that you do and allow it, it becomes less and less. Not that we're not sad, but it's something where we can find the more positive, loving meanings of, oh, this isn't going to devastate me for a week. Yes, I'm sad. I'll shed some tears, but then we're able to move through the emotions quickly. I think that's really the key. I mean, one thing that human beings have in common, we're all born with the same emotions, right? They're all over. We can experience every emotion. Well, doesn't that mean that we are supposed to experience all emotions and to really, truly and experience them? What does that look like? Do you really allow yourself to do that? And, like you said, it took you by surprise how many different emotions, and especially anger, came up when you lost your father. His father passed away last year, and I have been so surprised at how much I have grieved over that. He was just this wonderful, loving man. And my husband said it's the hardest thing he's ever gone through as an adult. And that would make sense. Just even you saying how you've had this anger come up. I have had some anger come up with it and have just been taken by surprise. Grief is just, I always just say it's so sneaky how it comes up and will trick us. And I've even attended an aunt's funeral that I hadn't seen in 20 years. And as her grandchildren came up and told stories about her, it triggered something in me. I thought, well, that's my childhood, but I know her better than you, although I hadn't seen her for 20 years, and these were her grandchildren. And I was so surprised by how much it affected me. So just those people who are near and dear to us, it does play a huge part. Grief does, and it will come up at expected times.
Yeah, it is sneaky. So what are some of the other things that we talked just a lot about death and loss, but it's not just reserved for death and loss. So talk to me about some of the other ways we experience grief.
Anything, I think, that you've had a major change in your life, a new chapter, divorce is definitely one of the number one things of how we grieve. Getting a new job, moving to a new home is a huge stressor and a source of grief. Becoming an empty nester, that's when I can totally relate because we're becoming a true empty nester this fall. And I've been a little panicked about it. In fact, I said to my husband, I said, boy, it's a good thing that we really like each other because this would be so challenging. I can see how so many couples divorce after all the children leave because it's like getting remarried again. And it's tricky. It's surprising, but it is a new chapter in our life. What does this look like? But really what it comes down to, it's the fact of where we are in the grieving process. I think some things, especially if someone has lost a child, a couple who has lost a child, one of the major conflicts is the fact that, well, my spouse isn't grieving the way that I grieve, and so they're doing it wrong. or I'm not understanding. They won't talk about it, or they won't do these things, be proactive about healing and seeing a therapist, or whatever it might be. We have to allow people to grieve in their own way. Again, it's very individual. And also that means that we can't generalize grief, meaning you lost your father, I lost my father. Oh, I know exactly what you're going through. I don't know what you're going through because your relationship was completely different than my relationship with my father. I know what it's like to lose a parent, but I don't know your grief journey exactly because it's different. We have different childhood, different memories of this person, different relationships. So to say you can say, I have lost a parent, I know what it's like to lose a parent. How has it been for you? We just take these assumptions and with other people, and we have good intentions, right? I'm sure that you've had some people saying, well, he passed when you were an adult. That's better than losing a parent as a child. We say these things because we have good intentions, yet it's not necessarily helpful to the person who's grieving because we're trying to jump over the grief. Yet, as a society, we have these things that we say because we just want to normalize everything again instead of going through the grief and being okay with not being okay.
I love the part that you alluded to, and I think I'll bring it back to just how important that is in relationships. That, like, maybe being frustrated with your partner because they're not grieving the way that you're grieving.
Totally.
And you can get mad. I'm like, well, you're not sad enough. Do you even care? And then you start taking it out on each other when I think the wisdom that you shared, it's so important to let people grieve in the way that they need to, because everybody grieves differently. Some internalize, some want to, go through the 5 stages of grief differently. Some are, wrapping it up. And, maybe I just bury stuff more than I should. And Sharla worries about that a little bit, but it can be sticky in a relationship. I can imagine that.
Even outside of this context where we're talking about grief, couples, there's something that we assess called meta emotions. And when I do an assessment with a couple, we look at the differences in how they view emotions. Yeah. So for example, I talked about my niece before. I don't do sadness. I only do anger and happy. That's the only 2 emotions that I have. There are people who have beliefs about certain emotions. There's individuals who might say, I hate anger because maybe they had an experience with a parent who was, maybe they experienced a lot of anger in a negative way and they refuse to let them themselves feel that anger. Whereas another person, I've had someone say, I love anger. It's so energizing. I would much rather feel angry than sad. And so we can have this mismatch between our spouse and ourselves in how we even believe and what we believe about certain emotions. And so now you compound that with a huge loss that is already so devastating that we're now sharing in, and we're looking at how we view emotions differently. Of course, that's going to create conflict. It's going to create communication challenges. It's going to create maybe even intimacy issues.
I think it's interesting when you talk about that, about how we view emotions. It's one thing theoretically to say, oh yeah, you're an internal external processor, or you like anger over something else. And then I think it's something totally different for me to be on the opposite end of that and then to experience those emotions. Right? Like, you were sharing a little bit of your story with a friend and she said, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
She didn't know what to do with your emotions. Yeah. 'Cause that's not something she's used to.
Which I think that would be a good segue into maybe another question that's coming up right now for me to ask you is, how do we say the right thing? Yeah. I think that's one thing that whether it's to our partner or whether it's just to a friend, one of the learnings that I've experienced just in the last few days is, like you said, we want to come in with the perfect response and just come up with oh, I'm sure they're better off, or I'm sure they're being reunited with their parents and they're much happier where they are. And some of that is, it does come across, being on the other side of this, is like, can't you just sit with me and just be okay with me being mad right now? I know it's uncomfortable for you, but if you don't, then I feel like all of a sudden I can't feel what I'm feeling, and I need to pivot to help you feel better because you're uncomfortable with my grief.
Exactly. Being able to truly sit with someone and just let them be and be more of an active listener. That's the whole thing about being a chaplain. It's first, it's non-denominational. It's not really attached to a specific religion. And my number one goal is to get you to feel what you're really feeling by asking questions. Tell me more about that. How does that show up for you? What does that mean to you? It has nothing to do with me. And we do, as good people, want to say the right things. We want to do the right things. We want to be the person who's going to take all of this pain away from you. However, nothing you do, nothing you say is going to be able to do that, because it's your process. It's not my process. And really, if we can just go and say, I have no idea what you're going through right now, but I want to hear, and just sit and listen. We don't have to say the perfect thing. All we have to do is be there to have a listening ear. I hear you. This is what, that repeat and affirm and repeat. Just saying it. This is what I hear you saying. Is that right? Tell me more about that. And it gets you to be able to dive deeper into your emotions, to feel them, to recognize them. Where my husband's anger is, that's where my sadness is. We might be at the same level, but we're at two different emotions. And what's interesting is anger is not an emotion I feel very often. I definitely didn't feel it as a child. It was more fear and anxiety, completely. But when I allowed myself to start feeling anger, I'm like, woo, I like this. This is giving me some energy. I really sat with anger, and I allowed myself to be angry for the first time as an adult, really, truly feeling it. And it just encompasses us of who we really are. We are just this plethora of emotions. And we hold back from a specific emotion, anger, fear, anxiety, whatever the bad emotions that they say that we have, it really cuts a part of us out to not only the world, but to ourselves. Like, we're not complete when we really hold back and don't allow ourselves to feel like that. And so letting someone else be able to feel any emotion under the sun, what a gift. Boy, what a friend that is. And just taking that weight off of our shoulders, it holds so many people back, especially when it's been, if there's been a death with suicide. I don't want to intrude. I don't know them that well. I shouldn't take something over. I'm going to say the wrong things. We just withhold. And instead of just showing up and saying, I don't know what to say, I want you to know I'm here for you. Anytime you want to talk, I would love to listen. I'm just a really good person to vent to. You can say anything to me. I'm a safe person. How wonderful would that be if we all showed up like that to each other, went to that depth, because that's being vulnerable, because what you say is probably going to trigger me. And for me to be able to sit there and regulate and to self-soothe myself, that's a process in and of itself. But the more we do it, the more we get better at it and allow people to do that. And it really starts the healing journey when we can do that.
So a couple thoughts that I'm having about that is, Robert and I studied nonviolent communication, and we teach a lot about nonviolent communication. And part of that was really starting to learn what empathy is and what it isn't. And a lot of the things we think empathy is, it really isn't, because all it is our presence. It's our ability to be present, truly present with another person, and be able to tune into what it is that they're feeling. And can I feel into it and not experience, but just be able to perceive it. Can I perceive what it is that you're feeling? Empathy isn't the words even that we say at all. It has nothing to do with words. It has to do with being able to tune in to what's alive in another person. That's it. And the greatest gift I think we can give one another is our presence. That's it. It's just, can I give my presence? But I also think it's one of the hardest things to give, because we're bringing in so much of our own baggage, our own past, worrying about the right things to say, our own anxiety, when in reality, it's so much easier to say, none of that actually matters. What matters here is just my presence. That's what matters.
I think the hardest part is a partner, and so I'll be your partner in this one. Wait, yeah. I'm your partner anyway.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I was that great over the past 4 or 5 days. I just tried to listen. And oh my gosh, that was so hard for a guy who wants to fix things. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm just looking for like, what can I say? Like, it's going to be fine. Like 900 things rolling through my head. And I'm sure that if the guys are listening here, like we want to fix things. And sometimes we just need to listen and even as much time as I've spent trying to learn how to sit in emotions and listen and be that person and genuinely be in empathy, it was still difficult for me. And I don't know how well I did it, but she said I did somewhat. So I got half the points maybe on this test.
No,
But
you get more than half. Last night we were laying in bed and he's called me and checked on me throughout the day and how are you really doing? How are you doing? Not just, hey, how are you? But how are you really doing? And last night we were laying in bed and the lights were off and he turned sideways on the bed and he put his head sort of over my stomach, and we were in the dark, but you could kind of see each other. And he just like, talk to me, and how are you really feeling? And he just sat there and listened. And at first I didn't want to talk, but you just seemed to drag it out of me because you just were there to just listen. And I shared things that I was feeling, and it felt good. It felt good because he was just there with me.
Yeah.
no, I did something else
Yeah.
right. I love what you said about, showing up without a plan, and a number of years ago. And I wish it, and you've already gave me some great advice on how to just up level the next thing. I for years when people would have tragedies in their life, I was that person. I'm like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. And then 2 weeks would go by and you're like, well, crap. Like I'm the worst person ever because I didn't bother saying anything. And so I would do half of what you mentioned. So I need to do the other half. I would just text them. I'm like, I have no words. This sucks. Call me if you need anything. Instead of trying to fix it or normalize it or like they're in a better place or all these things, which we want to be helpful. And so now for me, that's it. Like if somebody has a tragedy, I just immediately reach out as fast as I can. Like, look, you don't have to respond. You don't have to do anything, but this sucks. And I'm here if you need anything. Tell me how I can help. Like, I just want to be on your side. And that's it. And I think I need to take the next step. Like I can come over. I can be non-judgmental. I can listen if you want me to. And knowing me, that would be really hard to do. So I'm going to try that next. And I want to blame you for it. Thank you for that and good advice though.
Well, and even I think some of the most important ways, if you have a friend or a loved one, a dear one, that I always say it's about 2 weeks after the funeral that you really need to double down on checking up on someone, because that's when we've all gone back to our normal lives, the ones that weren't really directly affected by this loss that this person had, and texting them, calling them, showing up. Hey, let's go to lunch. I want to check on you. That's really when it hits home, because that's when everyone just, goes home, that all the planning is done. The house is back to normal. Everyone's back to work. Those are the times. And just to be able to say perfect words, this sucks. I'm here. I'm thinking about you. I thought about you this morning. How are you doing? And just giving people that opportunity. I love that. But just that reaching out. And again, they're such simple things, such simple words. This sucks. I was thinking of you this morning. Call me. I'm here. To know that when you're really going through grief, it's a lifeline. It's wonderful. Oh, someone's remembering that I'm really struggling over here. I'm remembered. It plays a huge part in people's grieving process, I think.
Yeah. How important are those words? I was thinking about you today. Just that.
Just that.
I mean, I don't know. Wow.
For all of us. Yeah.
Yeah. For any of us. Absolutely. I love that.
So this has been really helpful. What else? Empathy, our presence, just listening, not feeling like we need to put in a lot of words, but just being present with someone and listening to them. What else, when we bring this back to couples that are going through, like Robert and I right now, we're going through shared grief. Robert knew my dad for 33 years. What are some other things couples can do to just support each other? Do you have some great ideas for us even right now on ways that we can work through this together as a team? Because I want to be a team as we do this. I want to be really partnered and yoked as we go through this process together, not let it be something that causes us to drift apart. Dr. John Gottman did a lot of research on couples as he would watch them through 30, 40, 50 years of marriage. And one of the things that he noticed as they would go through job changes and death and children and all these big life transitions, there's certain ones that stayed together and they did it really well. And then there was the ones that let it destroy them. And the thing that seemed to make the biggest difference is they were able to stay friends through all those hard things, that they had a strong friendship that helped them through the highs and the lows. And so I guess my question, long-winded question to get to is how do we best stay friends and support one another through these hard things?
Well, I would say the number one thing in which you guys obviously do so well is have an open communication. Communication is like one of the most important thing. How are you feeling? What are you doing today? What are you experiencing right now? Just that open communication, and then being okay with where the other spouse is. Again, allowing them to grieve how they need to grieve, whether it's internal, external, whatever that is, but being supportive in that. I'm a big believer in therapy. Seeking someone professionally is a coach, a therapist, a support group. What does that look like for you? For not only you guys as a couple, but also you individually. And with that, self-care is huge. Just taking care of yourself. Does that mean taking a bath? Does that mean going out and golfing? Does that mean whatever it is to you that where you can feel some joy? Going to the gravesite to visit the grave. Talking, telling stories. Listening to stories of other people. Losing my mother so young, I have to rely on the memory of other people's stories for me to learn who she even was. I was so little. I have some memories, but not many. But I rely on other people's memories to be able to heal. It's a form of healing to me. Making sure that you're really surrounding yourself with the people who support you. Take a break from some if they may be toxic. Take a break. I just need to work on me, and I need to focus on the people who are helping me in this way. Those kinds of things I think are very, very important, especially when it comes to a couple doing it together, but also making sure that you're taking care of yourself as well.
Yeah, those are some really good ideas. I spent a good part of the afternoon today just in my garden, just digging holes, hooking up little sprinkler lines, just watching the bees and the butterflies fly around. And for me, that's my self-care. That's my self-soothing. And Robert came home and the first thing he said to me, oh, I just got emotional. Like the first thing he said to me was, I'm so happy to see you in your garden because I know that this is your happy place. So, yeah, that's really, really good advice.
Well, and it sort of to what you alluded to earlier when you talked about like, when do I know I'm done with therapy? It's also, when do I know that I'm starting to feel a sense of normalcy? Normalcy?
Well, we'll call it normal.
Yeah, normal. When you start being creative and doing the things that bring you joy instead of avoiding those things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in that process too, I think also becoming creative again, but also that means that you're becoming a creator. For me, that was writing books. For other people, it might be starting a foundation in the honor of the one that they lost.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
What does that mean? How do we keep their memories alive? What does that mean for all of us? It doesn't mean we have to go and build a foundation or write a book, but how do we keep their spirit alive in our life? Telling stories, talking about them, scrapbooking, journaling. Those are all the kinds of things where we're creating something. And I think that's on the other side of grief. When you are able to become a creator again, you're coming out of the grieving cycle.
One of the things that was coming to my mind as you were talking about couples processing different is how some of us are strong internal processors and some of us are very external processors. So we like to talk through what we're feeling, or we like to reflect inside for a little while before we feel safe sharing outside. And I am very much an internal processor. Robert's an external processor. So for us, you'll see us work through emotions very different, where I will be very reflective, and I might be reflective for 2 or 3 or 4 days. I might be a week before I'm ready to share stories and talk about things because I've already worked through it and talked internally to myself for a really long period of time before I'm ready to talk out loud. That's just how I am. But so I think there's that patience with him not getting mad at me if I'm not talking. He just knows that about me, that's how I work through things, is I talk to myself inside my mind, and also not getting upset with him if he's talking too much. My niece that I mentioned, who's probably a lot like me, her husband was just like, you can talk to me. I'm here for you. You can talk to me. And it's not that she doesn't know that. It's that she's probably like me, very much still working through it. And he felt a little sad that she wasn't turning to him.
If she stopped talking, I'd be nervous. Yes. She talks a lot. She's awesome. And I love her to death, but she's always talking. If she stopped talking, I'd call an ambulance.
Yeah.
Like, this girl's in deep depression. That's probably why everybody doesn't know what to do with her when she's being sad.
Right.
Absolutely.
But then also, isn't that helpful for us to explain to our spouse, hey, this is how I process things.
Oh, I love that.
This is how I'm processing it. I need you to know I might be really reflective and quiet for a few days and in certain moments, or I might talk a lot, and, just please bear with me. But just that reminder, I'm like you, Robert. I'm more of a talker, and my husband's more of an internal. And I will be so in my head, like, he's not saying anything. What is he thinking? And then I overanalyze everything. And he's like, I'm good. Like, I'm totally chill. And he's just been reflective, and that's all it is.
Exactly. It's so funny how we're so different.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So when do you think couples, you mentioned like friendships really briefly when you were talking about things that couples can do, and I was starting to think, as you were talking about all these things we can do to have self-care, how do we rely on people outside of our marriage for support, and who do we know that we can turn to, and how do we incorporate that into our marriage? Maybe you don't feel comfortable right away being sad in front of your spouse.
Right.
And maybe you turn to a friend or an aunt or a sister.
Yeah. I think I call it, teaching people how we talk about suicide. I've come up with that 1 to 10, how you been? And I always talk about your safe person. Who is your safe person that you can go and say anything to? I have one girlfriend where we've literally made a contract with each other. We're each other's bragging partners. Like, you can say anything to me. You made this amount of money, or you did this really cool thing, or you went on all of these trips, and I will cheer you on and be so excited. And vice versa, I can do the same thing for her. She is my person. So maybe even coming up with a contract and literally asking someone, hey, can you be my safe person? Can you be my person that I can vent to? I don't necessarily, if I don't want to scare my spouse, if I'm really grieving, I want, to have a brave friend or be supportive, but this is really bothering, and I know that they cannot handle that right now. Can I talk to you? And just having that conversation, can I trust you with that? And, finding that person who would be that in your life. And it's not necessarily a spouse or someone in our family or a close friend even. Sometimes we're more vulnerable with strangers or people that we don't have as much of a deep relationship with because we don't have as much to risk. Like, I can say something to you and you're not going to leave me because you're not really part of my life. So I can be completely open and honest to you. But you're a friend, but you're not part of my inner circle. And that's okay. Who is that for you?
Good ideas.
I love that. Especially if you have a partner who's not great at managing that. Like, if you knew that sharing your emotions with me would maybe push me over the edge because I'm having difficulty processing my own emotions, that would be, my bucket's already full. And if you added to it, I would just flow over and it wouldn't be, and I'd be no support. It'd be a puddle.
Yeah.
And you can be in a relationship like that. Yeah.
And I think I'm going to go back to just something we talked about on an episode a couple months ago, is the idea of being able to co-regulate with another person. That when someone can really be there with you and be present with you, and they can be strong, you can co-regulate off of that person and borrow their neurology temporarily to help soothe yourself. And so if you're struggling to self-soothe, being with another person and being in having a relationship of, even if it's not with your spouse, even if it's with your sister or your best friend, that you have someone that you can co-regulate with, that can really help.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So when do you think it's time? Are there some signs that you mentioned you love therapy, but when do you think it's really important that someone go get some help professionally from an expert?
I think therapy is a great thing at any time of your life. I think of it, I always ask people, what's your definition of a therapist? Do you have that vision, what it is, a Hollywood version of where you're lying on a couch and someone's sitting next to you with a notepad? What do you think a therapist is? Because the older I get, the more people I found that, oh, I would never go to a therapist. And I always ask that question, what does that mean to you? Because to me, my definition of a therapist is a coach. Like, we would not go to the Super Bowl and play the game without a coach, right? Well, what about your life, which is the biggest game that we play without a coach? So for me, it's real natural to go to someone who's trained and to be able to, well, it might be a life coach, it might be a trained therapist, but that you have someone to be able to talk to, get more information, learn that there are different levels of grief and being able to heal, whatever that is for your life. We always call it a checkup from the neck up. Those things, no matter even if you are grieving or not, let's get a checkup from the neck up. How are you doing in life? Are you stuck somewhere? Where do you want to be more fulfilled? Are you stuck in the grieving process, which is something very, very common? When you have people and the person that they lost, their bedroom has stayed the exact same way for 5 years, that's a major sign that they're stuck in the grieving process. Or on the flip side, they never talk about them. I've heard stories of families where they've lost someone to suicide. They got rid of everything, every picture, everything that they owned, as if this person never existed. Well, that's being stuck in the grief process as well. How do we move through that? What are some things? And a coach just is a great way. It's that safe person in your life that makes sure you have that good relationship, because there are some coaches you match with, and there are some coaches that you don't. So make sure that it may not be the first one that you go to, that you really resonate with. Make sure that they're the right person for you to be able to help you through whatever you want to work through.
Perfect. Two more things. One, I would love to hear a little excerpt from your book. If you would read a little piece for us, I would love if you would mind. And then either whatever order you want to do it. Also, I want you to tell people how they can connect with you, because you're amazing and everyone should be connected with you. So do you have a website, an Instagram? I want people to be able to find you. So tell us how to do that. And then whatever order you wanted to do, and also share with us a little bit from your book.
Okay, wonderful. We'll start off with the book. This book is just, hopefully, the main thing I wanted to provide for people was just to take a little shift to know that we're still connected to those that we love, even though that they've passed. And the number one thing I had as a child is I felt so alone. I felt so disconnected to everything. But the thought and the experiences I've had of just that feeling of being connected to those who have passed, especially my mom, it has been so life-changing for me, just giving a whole new outlook on life. So that's what the whole storyline is in the book. It's, the bunny is one of the key figures into it. And I sent in pictures of myself and my parents and my brothers, and we're all characters in this book. So it's really of my family. And the whole process is, the mother is using this bunny as an example to teach Jenny what love is. And she takes her away from her bunny and says, well, do you still have these feelings for this bunny? She goes, well, of course. She goes, well, that's what love is. It will always connect you to one another. So one thing, especially if, those of us who have children, my favorite page in the book is this page right here. And my favorite line in the book, I'll give you this one. And it's written like a Dr. Seuss. for whatever reason, it came out rhyming. And I tried and tried. I gave it to my brother when I first wrote it, and he said, we should leave the rhyming up to Dr. Seuss, and you should just write a book. And I'm like, okay, fine, I'll rewrite it, and put it on the shelf, and tried and tried and tried. Like, I'm like, how do I start this? Once upon a time? Like, this is not working. It's not flowing. So I just kept rhyming it and got more of my rhythm down of the rhyming. And this is what it came out. But I remember so specifically, it was the afternoon. This line came through. It says, Jenny's mom gave a smile. Let's go home, she softly said. The sun has fallen asleep, and that means it's time for bed. And I was like, well, those aren't my words. Wow, that was amazing how that line just came through. But this is, if we are a parent and our last words to our child, I think would be this page of what we would want to say to them if we knew that by morning we would no longer be on this earth. And it says this, the scene is Jenny's laying in bed and her mother's tucking her in and Jenny's holding her bunny. And she's taught her this lesson about how love will always connect you together. So this says, Mommy, tuck me in with my bunny and sit right next to me. Kiss me goodnight, hold me tight. You are my favorite place to be. Oh, my sweet child, how I love you. Never forget what you learned today, that I will be with you always, even when I am away. Those words that's the pinnacle of what we would say to our child. Like, always remember this. I will be with you. I will be watching over you. You have nothing to fear. So that's my favorite part in the book. And then Jenny goes on to remember this lesson her mother has taught her and that she's going to be okay because her mom will always be watching over her. So that's my favorite page in the book.
Beautiful.
I love that.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Tell us how to connect with you.
I have a website called loveconnectsus.com. And on there, send me an email. I can ship everything out to you. I'm in the process of changing where I'm sending out all of my items. So I have my books, I have my bunnies, whatever it is that you need, and I can get back to you and ship them off. I'm also on Instagram, Jennifer Schofield Morris, and posting on Facebook as well. And we'll goal this year to start my podcast as well. So you guys have really inspired me. I love it. Might have to come down for some tips and tricks.
We'll come on over.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll link to everything in our show notes. So for those of you who are listening on Apple, Spotify, if you just go to the show notes, you'll be able to find all the things to connect you to Jennifer there in the show notes.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you. You want to wrap us up?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to. I want to talk to Jen more.
We really appreciate you.
Yeah, thank
You're
you
amazing.
so much.
We loved visiting with you. We loved getting to know you on our scuba trip, you and your husband. You guys are both beautiful people that we really enjoyed spending time with.
Yeah,
So
one of our favorite memories. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, you as well. I just love learning stories about you and what you do, helping other people. Love you both, and so grateful that we were on that trip. And thank you so much for inviting me to be on Hunter with you. I am honored. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, that's awesome. Well, we thank you for joining us today. And, you know, if our listeners, if any of this resonated with you, we'd love to hear from you. And go on Instagram, find Jen, check out her books, go to her website. We'll link that in the show notes. As always, be kind to each other, put each other first. Remember, it's the small things done often that make the greatest impact.
Until next time.